Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at Field Commander Napoleon from Dan Versen Games. Quick disclaimer that I was sent a review copy of this game. Between Warfighter and all the David Thompson designs I've covered recently, DVG's been on a winning streak with me. Does Field Commander Napoleon continue it? Let's find out and get to the list. I'm starting out with a pro at number 5, and that's focused on the wide-scale army movement around the map that makes up the core part of the game until you get into a battle. You don't spend a ton of playtime at this scale because the individual battles are really the centerpiece of the game, but I still really appreciate the streamlined design of this part of play while also providing majorly impactful decisions. Which armies do you leave behind to guard your strong points in case the enemies rush around and try to grab them? Who do you bring into battle? How and when do you spend your supply points to force march and try to get a tempo advantage? It all works really well with an extremely simple rule set. Speaking of streamlining, my number 4 is also a pro, and that's focused on the enemy activation, both on the wide map and also in battle. Now, not all players are going to like how enemy movement works, because a lot of it is random, based either on die rolls or chit pools, and the system relies on the player to break ties, which are fairly numerous, and really encourages you to make the worst possible decision for the AI, which some players aren't going to like. But for me, the large randomness in enemy actions greatly increases the variety of the game, and I like that the enemy can still surprise you, like sometimes one of their armies will sneak around all of your forces and capture a city you left behind, really leading to a dynamic experience. My number 3 is along the same lines, but it's focused specifically on the randomness, both for the enemies and for the player. And for me, it's a pro, but some players are going to find this a mix or a con. Now, to be fair, there are a ton of dice rolls in this game. Like, if you have a huge cavalry charge ready and it never goes off, or if your most important unit fails to execute their orders, you can be left high and dry and be destroyed. But this doesn't bother me in play because pretty much everything is a risk-reward choice. If you don't want to risk that cavalry charge, you have a more consistent option to choose that won't be as devastating. So when the dice end up not on my side, I feel like it's usually because of choices I made and not just because of pure randomness. And again, going back to my number 4, you really need the randomness in this game because otherwise the scenarios, which have the same setup each time, would become too procedural and it would be kind of the same thing each time. I have another pro at number 2. I know, it's a lot, and that is the great variety of scenarios in the game. The game comes with a ton of different scenarios, each modeling a major campaign in Napoleon's history. And I'm not just impressed by the number of scenarios, but how varied they are. Some of them are huge cakewalks, some of them are nearly impossible. You have special rules where you're fighting partisans and protesters, trying to survive the Russian winter, trying to take all of Egypt before reinforcements show up at your back. They each have something unique, something cool, and in a way they're kind of like a puzzle that encourages you to play them again and again to try to reach a better victory. But I do want to bring up 2 elements that might push this to a mix for you. First of all, because they are somewhat like a puzzle, it might feel a little samey or like you're going through the motions if you play through them again. I think the random elements do change it up enough that it is worth playing them again, but some players won't. And the other potential negative to note is organization. Every single scenario has its own unique set of chips, so unless you're ready to bag a whole bunch, that's what I did to just have one bag for each scenario, you're going to have a terrible time trying to find the stuff for the game. And finally, I am going to end on a mix, although it kind of leans pro for me and could lean con for others, and that's the core battle mechanics in the game. Before each battle, you have a fog of war roll, which I already love because they add something unexpected to the battle and also determine how long it is, which can drastically change the feel of a battle. But then the battles themselves rely on placing these battle plans on your units and rolling to see if they execute their orders and doing the same with the enemy, and I find it really fun. I think there's a lot of tactics, and I think a huge battle versus a small battle feels drastically different. But the reason this is a mix for me, and could fall all the way to a con for you, is that the battles can sometimes feel repetitive. You might find yourself using the same units in the same positions. I still think it's fun and never wears out its welcome, but you might have a different experience. So overall, if you can't tell, I had a blast with Field Commander Napoleon. There's such great variety in scenarios, and so many scenarios. Combat is fun, the management of your armies is great, and I personally really like the variety and sort of random things the AI does to change up the challenge each time. But you might want to avoid this one if you don't like dice luck, if you want your AI opponent to be incredibly smart, or if you don't like the idea of scenarios and battles where sometimes the same strategy might get used time and again. But for me, Field Commander Napoleon is great, packing such an epic, amazing wargame experience into a very reasonable time frame. And if you'd like to see the game in action, click the link that just popped up to see me play through a whole campaign. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.